I already showed how to launch a schedule within the workbench, and now I'm going to show a couple of other ways to launch a schedule. One way is within the workbench, running a configuration which mentions a schedule, and that's useful for specifying where the output goes, or from a command line from a shell script or a batch file, and that's useful for test automation. And in that case, RPT runs headless with no GUI. So let me show you how to create a configuration and run it. You do the run, you run configuration, and the very first time you do this, you're going to have to create a new configuration. Next time around, it will already be there, but this time I'm showing how to do it new. Do a new performance schedule, and you name the configuration. Name it something meaningful that you can recognize what it's for. And you can then pick what schedule you want to run with this configuration. And you can also specify where the output goes. You can say the defaults, but it's useful to override those. That way you can name the run. You can give it some sort of meaningful name that indicates what you're testing. And you can also say where the result goes. And if you have subdirectories in that result folder, like for build 99, you can put it in the build 99 directory. And then to kick off that schedule, that's part of the configuration, you just click the run button. And after that, it'll look more or less like a schedule launched directly. The other way to launch a schedule is from the command line, and that's used for test automation. You invoke it from a batch file or shell script, and RPT runs without the workbench GUI being shown in that case. So let me show you an example of a batch file that I have that launches a schedule. Now, a couple of things about this is that you have to be in the directory where the command line execute file is. And so you can see I'm doing a CD to the program D program files, and this particular build of RPT has this version of command line execute. So I changed directories to there. And the set commands there are demonstrating that I can have input variables into a batch file that you can then pass to RPT. I mean, I'm just setting them here in my example to a hard-coded value, but basically it could be an input parameter to a batch file, and that's useful for automation. And then you call command line, which is the RPT batch file or shell script that launches RPT, and you pass in a bunch of parameters, including the name of the workspace that you want to be running from, the project that you're running from, where the schedule is within the project, what your results project is. In other words, you can have one project for your schedule and a different project for the results. And then you can say where you want your results to go. And that's useful because you can then pass in a build ID, for example, or a server name, and the results will be in a directory that's named that includes the build ID and server name as part of the results name. And you can also export a CSV with the export stats parameter, so you can automatically export output, which you can also then process as part of your automation. RPT's got documentation for how to run a schedule from the command line, and the URL's up there in the top of the screen, and the parameters are all described below. I don't know if this is the right one for 851. I don't know if they've updated this or not. Now, a couple of things about command line. There was a new parameter introduced in RPT 851 that's very useful. It's called user comments. And with that, you can pass in user comments to run that's kicked off from the command line. So your automation can pass in the build ID, for example, or some comments about what you have tuned or what's changed in this build, and it will get entered into the user comment field in the results, which is very useful for knowing what you've done. And so basically it allows you to identify the run that you kicked off from the command line. A couple of gotchas about running a command line script. The command line script assumes that Java is on the path. Java.exe is on the path. So if you try to run it, the script, and it can't find Java, it'll just fail. So typically what I do is I go into command line.bat on Windows, and I edit the line that kicks off Java, and I make sure that the Java that's called is the one that exists, that is shipped with RPT Workbench. The other thing that can get you is that if RPT delivers a fix pack, and the fix pack includes a fix to the package that has command line.bat in it, the directory where the bat file is can change, and then your CD to that directory, your change directory to in your bat file which invokes it, is now invoking the wrong batch file, or it may not even exist anymore. It probably got deleted. So that basically, an RPT fix pack can break your automation. So that's just a couple of things to watch out for. In summary, within the Workbench, there's 3 ways to run a schedule. Within the Workbench, you can run a schedule by looking at the schedule and then hitting the Run button. That's easiest, but you can't control where the results are kept. The other way is within a Workbench, you could run a configuration, and that's useful for specifying where the output goes, and that's what I just talked about today. And the third way for launching a schedule is from the command line, and that's useful for test automation because you can invoke it from a batch file or shell script. And RPT runs headless in that case, no GUI. Now you might wonder, if RPT is running with no GUI, how do you monitor it run to see what's going on while it's in progress? And I will discuss that in the next lecture.